Excellent. So it looks like, oopsie daisy, looks like that has gone live. So let us just see if we can find ourselves on. Oh yeah, that's positive. It's always helpful. Let me come into here. Excellent. And there we are. I have no idea how many people will or won't join us this evening because I'm a bit out of kilter with my normal times for doing things. So I suspect that some people might be a little confused as to where we're up to. And that's why. Hi, Connie. Hi, Sheila. Thank you for joining us. Sorry about the day change. It's just that I needed to get my husband to a hospital appointment yesterday and I wasn't sure I'd be back in time. So hence the little bit of a rearrangement. Now tonight's live is going to be somewhat different to my normal lives, and that's because Penta have asked me to go through the new Artemisia products from Penta. This is a whole new range of products designed with the fine artist in mind. Allowing Hungary to have a brand that will give artisanal, archival quality imagery for the fine artists. But that doesn't, of course, mean that it can't be used by other people. But the quality of the line is such that it has been designed to be archival and to replace maybe some of the other fine art material companies that are on the market and give enduring longevity to your products. So broadly, so that's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to talk through the different ranges. I haven't got everything in the range because the priority went for some of the products went out to the distributors and retailers, but I have some more on the way. And my plan for tonight literally is going to be to go through the new products, explain them as much as I can, and ultimately then over the next few weeks we'll be making some products or projects using the fine art materials but my style. Penta understand that I am not an artist in the sense that I don't paint pictures. I produce pieces of work with lots of molds, lots of decoupage techniques, lots of paper products in a more craft style, although I might do that to a very high level. It's not the same as being a fine artist. If you ask me to draw something and it was meant to be a face, then to quote my daughter, I do a very nice line in Aliens. So I guess that says it all, really. Anyway, enough of the preambling and moving about. Let me just grab a few brushes because I didn't get those all out. So broadly, the range can be divided into 3 product ranges. A set of basics, textures, primers, gels that can be used for both of your ordinary acrylic paints, and also as a base layer for projects that you might want to use oil paints on. So I'm going to go through these in that sort of style so that we understand the basic products. I'll talk through the ones that I'm missing, then we'll move on to some of the others. But the intention isn't really to make a project per se this evening because there isn't time. There's a lot of products to go through. So we all know that I love Pentart's existing primers. Their primer paste is really thick, great for covering molds with, but thick enough to use as a stencil base if that's what you want to do. I also like their acrylic primer for porous surfaces, and also the bonding primer for non-porous surfaces. So what have Pentart brought to the mix for this collection? Well, they've brought out a black and a white gesso. These are available in 250, 500 and 1 litre bottles. So clearly, if you're a professional artist, you might need an awful lot more stuff. So let's just have a little catch up. Hi, Elizabeth. Hi, Juliana. Good evening, Elizabeth. Hi, Marini. Good evening, Lynn. Thank you so much for joining us. So what's different about the Artemisia acrylic gessos? There's a white one and a black one. And for those of you who haven't picked up yet, Artemisia is has a second name which is utterly unpronounceable for me in English, but she was an Italian artist who did lots of Baroque style work, and her work is truly beautiful. I wish I could do something along her lines, but I can't, so I'm not going to pretend that I can. I've just got some white canvases here just as a backdrop to show you what we're dealing with. So the acrylic is much thinner. It does have a body, but it's definitely not as thick as the acrylic the previous paste, and I wouldn't necessarily want to use this on a or through a stencil, but it does give beautiful coverage, and you can see from that actually a small amount actually goes an awful long way. And the recommendation for the acrylic primers is, and all fine artists do prime their canvases even if they come pre-primed, is that you need to put a layer down, let it dry, and then put a second layer on. And if you want, or you've put it onto maybe a wood base rather than a canvas, and you want it to be super smooth, that you can then sand it back to give you a super smooth surface. And this is the black, so we'll just pop that over here. And the black, I just literally put the tiniest amount on that brush, so you'll be able to see just how far one brushful or less than one brushful of the primer will go. And then you can see from here that there is a slight transparency to this black, but the recommendation is that you put 2 layers on to give really good coverage. But it's going an awful long way, so whatever size pot you have is surely going to last you an awful long time. Good evening, Rima from Wars and More. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. So I don't know if you can see, but if I lift that up, I can see that there is a transparency there, but as I thin this out, but I am and that's fine, but it does mean that this is a medium that will spread really easily, and you can use more than one layer. And as I say, the recommendation is that you use 2 layers, drying well in between. These are water-based products, so easy cleanup, though there is a cleaner specifically that goes along with the Artemisia line that you can pop into a pot, rinse out your brushes, and then following that wash them with soap and water and any whatever you want, and that will help to keep your products safe and your brushes in good condition. We all know that I tend to work with not brilliant brushes, but here we are. So those are the bases. We have a black gesso and a white gesso, and they're really helpful as a base for anything. And they're definitely thinner than the primer paste, but give good coverage for things that you might want to do a fine art painting on, but not always fine art painting. So let me just tuck that out of the way. We then have a range of structure products. So let me talk you through these. Hello, Laurie. There we are. So these, and again, I haven't got the full set, but I will talk you through all of these as we get to them, and we'll explain them through. Okay. So let's start with the ones that you'll see me use fairly frequently. This is a structure paste. There is a modelling paste as well, but that one I haven't got. So the modelling paste is smooth. The structure paste, as its name would imply, has a structure to it. So you can see it's reasonably thick. It's holding its form, and it will go through and add texture to your piece, and it will hold its form and its shape. So that's quite helpful. It's a white paste. It will dry as a white paste. If I lift that up, you can see that there's lots of texture in there, and it will equally go through a stencil if that's what you want to do. And as I say, there is a modelling paste that goes with the line. My impression is that the Artemisia structure paste is finer in structure than the classical structure paste. It feels less gritty and it gives a softer feel to the surface. So that's the key difference for that. Okay, so structure paste and modelling paste, both of which will go through stencils and add some degree of texture depending on what you want, or both of which can be mixed with watercolour products to get water-based products, so your ordinary acrylic paints, your Artemisia acrylic paints to add colour, but this is white so that you will get a muted tone from it. Okay. There are 3 different powders in the range. This one is the 3D powder in fine, and it is really very, very fine and soft. It's more grainy than the brocante powder, and is fairly similar to the Artstone's the texture powder in fine. There is also a coarse 3D powder that you can use. So those will mix in to give texture with your paint. So we'll come back to that when I get the paints out. And then and there's also a chalk powder that comes in reasonably big pots, and that can be added to any of your acrylic paints to give a chalky type effect. Okay. Then coming again to 2 products that you may already feel that you know. Let's just move that where I can get it. Artemisia Heavy Body Gel Transparent. So let me open this pot for you. I have already had this open because I've had a knife in it. But there we are. It's just, there we are. I can see where I've opened it. There we are. Okie dokie. So this is a heavy body gel. Fine artists are not just known for painting, for gluing things down. This is a glossy medium, and it is really quite thick. It can be coloured with your acrylic mediums, any of your acrylic paints. You can put texture, any of the powders into it to create your own textured gel to put through stencils if the structure paste doesn't give you the effect that you want, and it will keep its shape. So you can, if you want, learn to make petals with this, and it, although it's white here as it is here, it ultimately will dry clear, so and glossy. So it's a transparent medium when it's clear. Good evening, Helen. Welcome. Helen is the UK importer of Pentart mediums, and she has a network now of shops in the UK that will sell Pentart, including her own shop, Just Like Home Interiors. So that is a transparent medium, and I can imagine doing lots of petals on that. If you Google, there's lots of videos on YouTube showing people doing lots of makes with coloured gel mediums, and this has been designed so that you can add your acrylic paints into these. Okay, so this one is black heavy body gel. Oopsie daisy. So it is a gorgeous, gorgeous ink black. So if you're wanting to add colour over the top, and again, it has the same benefits of that. Now, the heavy body gel will dry glossy too. So that makes it ideal for if you want to add your chrome pigments to it afterwards, because they work really well on a glossy background. But equally, you can pop it through a stencil. Both of these will go through stencils and hold their form, and then you can sprinkle your mica powders over them, your micro beads, anything that you want to stick into them for added texture will work quite well for doing that. So these are standalone products for the Artemisia line, designed to be archival quality and last for many moons. Okay. You've heard me say it time and time and time again, you know, to give your products longevity. Yes, Elizabeth, it absolutely will hold as a gel, as a glue too. So use what you want. If you're wanting a black glue, because there isn't a black glue on the market, but that might be appropriate, then the heavy body gel in black will work perfectly as a black gel to glue things down. It's not quite as gloopy as the heavy body, as the classic heavy body gels. It's a little softer than that, but it will absolutely act as a glue. And if you want a clear glue, then the transparent heavy body gel from this range will work as that. So you don't need to have lots of different products in your range, or you can mix and match them with pleasure. You've heard me say it many times before. I think it's important that your work is varnished when it is finished, and there is an acrylic varnish in matte, and also an acrylic varnish in glossy. And I'm just going to paint over this top, paint these over the top of that black gesso, so you can see the different, hopefully see the different effect that you will get with the two products. And these are the only two that I haven't actually opened. The rest I have. So let me just open this. But it's the same with any varnish system. And I just need to make sure I put the lids on the correct ones, because otherwise I know what will happen. I will get them all mixed up. And cross-contamination is never good, is it? There we are. So let's just lift that up. These will peel off completely, but I deliberately didn't want them all off. So I have a matte black surface here. And so let's just take some of that matte varnish, and cover over. And we'll leave that to dry. So that is just the matte at the top of there, over there in one line. Let's just grab a clean brush so we know that we haven't cross-contaminated. This is the glossy. So they look different, okay? The matte, it has a whiter appearance. And I think I can certainly see the difference. I'll give these a little blast, and then you can see the difference in them. And this is the same effect it will have on your paintings. The matte will just provide an archival level of seal that will not yellow with the passage of time, because that's a problem with some acrylic varnishes. and the glossy varnish will have the effect of immediately brightening and intensifying your colours. So if I pop that up, so this is where the matte is really matte over that black. So that is now dry over so this is completely dry there, but you can see that I just get a brighter appearance with that, the glossy varnish. So pick the format that works for you. If you're wanting to brighten your colours, have a vibrancy to them, then the glossy varnish is the one to go to. If you're wanting a flat finish, then the matte will work. And as I say, this is the matte, it is very white, and this is the glossy, which is has a semi-opaque appearance to it. So let's just make sure we get the lids on the correct ones, because otherwise I'll grab by the lid, not look at the bottom of the pot, and then will absolutely cause myself no end of grief by mixing them up. Okay, and as I say, there is a brush cleaner that comes with it, so that you can get those separately to look after your products. Okay, so you can see that the heavy body gels are still holding their depth quite nicely as they are. The structure paste is much softer, and as I say, there is a modelling paste. So let's just pop that canvas over there out of harm's way. Now then, what are we going to talk about next? There are some more mediums, but they definitely are mediums designed to work with the colour palette that goes with this collection. So let me just pick up the colours. Well, some of the colours. So fine artists are used to buying their paints in tubes. They're really thick. That means that they can be diluted down, they can be colour mixed, and the colours will remain true to themselves. And there are, I think, 51 colours in the Artemisia range of paints. They come in 20ml tubes. Okay, so that's this size. There are 40ml tubes, and I actually think there's also a ginormous 120ml tube, which very sensibly I haven't been sent, because I will never use 120ml of them. So let's have a look at these. So the first thing to say is that traditional acrylic paints have had toxic heavy metals in them, so cobalt and cadmium, and there is a cobalt blue. There we are, this is cobalt blue, but this actually has no cobalt in it, so there are no heavy metals in these paints at all, which is a really positive sign for everyone's health and safety. There are some so there are non-toxic pigments that have been around for decades, since the beginning of time. But there are also fallow colours that have been made synthetically in the lab over the last 100+ years, that have been designed to replicate or fill in the gaps where nature's pigments didn't work for people. So if I've got these two out, we've got cobalt dark blue and fallow green. And the eagle-eyed, if I bring this up, we'll see that we've got some markings on these tubes, and these will go. This is a system that goes across many brands, so it makes it easier for people to understand how pigment dense and how light fast your materials are likely to be. So the square box on these, if it's fully blacked out, means that isn't a fully opaque colour. So it will blot out anything that's behind it. And the half filled is semi-transparent or semi-opaque, so it will not, a single layer will not blot everything out completely, but if you layer it up, you'll get more density of pigment. If there is a open square, then it means that the paint is transparent, and there isn't a transparent one as far as I've worked out in this range. So they're either going to be fully opaque or semi-opaque. Now, in the range of paints, of products, is an acrylic dilutant. And you think, what is that for? Well, these pastes are really, really very thick. And I'll squidge them out now for you. And you'll be able to see just how thick they are. Oops, she says, squashing everything and squidging and making an absolute mess. So this blue is fully opaque and things. If I want to have this as a wash, and many fine artists work, start out with a base layer that is a wash. If I add the dilutant to it, it will thin it down. But because it's got the same acrylic base, it means the integrity of the paint will be preserved. Adding water to it will thin it out for you, but it will affect the overall integrity. So if I pop this over, you can see that I'm getting really full coverage. That colour is really staying very true all the way through. So if I want more of a wash, as a fine artist, I would add a dilutant to this, and then it will spread out further from there. But these are beautiful, beautiful colours. Okay, let's pop that in there. So let's go with the phthalo green, which is a semi-opaque. Just pop a little bit there. You can see that a little bit will go an awful, awful long way. By doing this, let's just pick a nice soft brush to separate this out. So there we are. And I think, yeah, so I can still see the white below that. It's giving me less coverage, good coverage. I'm not going to say it's not good coverage, but I can definitely see that I haven't blotted out all of the white on there, particularly as I thin it out further. Okay, and if I want to merge these, then the acrylic dilutant will help me do that. But we also have a product called acrylic retarder. So let me just... So this is a liquid. So I'm going to move this over here. So I'm going to pop just... I've got a pipette because it's going to make it easier to control. So I'm just going to pop a little blob of acrylic retarder onto there. I can put the excess back in the pot. So some cheap disposable pipettes required because it's coming in a pot. And then I can... Ooh, 25 tons of paint, which will end up going. So I can then mix this into here. It'll keep the same colour intensity. Yeah, I've got the same colour intensity. So even though I've added that liquid, I've kept the colour intensity going through, but it's spreading a bit further because it's more liquid. And this is all, it will just take a lot longer to dry. And that is absolutely brilliant if you're needing to merge colours away, because one of the headaches with a conventional acrylic paint is that they dry really quite quickly. And sometimes, particularly in my conservatory on a warm day, so I've just mixed the two together there because I mixed them on my brush, but this is going to allow me to blend these through really quite nicely. You can see I've still got good movement all the way through here. She's just going to let me, and I've got some texture, and that's fine. You can get a soft brush and pounce it out if you want to, but you can see that this is just allowing me to mix these colours through and through blur them into each other. So I'm getting a really nice transition through. But that will now take a lot longer to dry. It's still moving on my palette. Whereas the paint at the top is already dry. I can move over it, I can paint over it, but I've got a transparency. But I can then mix the two together, and I've got a graded appearance and lots of working time just to pop these colours and to merge it through until I'm completely happy with what I've got. And that is the acrylic retarder. So it's a useful thing that hasn't been in the medium so far, and it's really going to make things slower to put together. And have I now got paint all over everything? Of course I have. So let me just clear that up. So, and then we'll go through some of the paints, and I'll show you more of the colours, because the colour palette is lovely. Okay, so we've gone through opacity. Oh, she says, look at the state of her fingers. Look at the state of her products. You know, keep them clean. That would be good, wouldn't it? So the eagle eyes around you may have also noticed that there are some crosses next to that square. And those are an indication of light fastness. So how colour true your pieces will stay over the passage of time. Okay, and 3 squares is really very light fast, isn't going to change over the time. 2 is not quite so light fast, but will still last for an awful long time. 1 is not really very light fast at all, and and there aren't any of those. So the Pentart Artemisia line acrylic paints are either super light fast or light fast, but they don't have any of the ones that are non-light fast in this range. So if you are a fine artist and you want something to last and hand down from generation to generation, because you want to paint a picture of your grandchildren, or or something that's going to be treasured for many generations, these products will do that for you in a way that the ordinary craft matte acrylics maybe are less rigorous. So this is still really quite wet. You can see it's wet from the fact that it's still shiny, and I'm going to pop that onto the floor. And I'm going to grab this board because I don't really want to waste lots of them. I'm going to say there is a dilutant that comes in a bottle that you can pour out, so that's better, isn't it, from that point of view? And then we have a medium called Impasto. So I know that there is a well-known brand of paints called Impasto paints, and Pentart have their own creamy acrylic range. That is very cost effective. This will give your paint texture and depth and dimension and make it really quite manipulatable. So if you can see just how thick that medium is, and it's Impasto medium, and it's designed to allow you to give your paints structure, which is good if you're wanting to mimic the structure of oil paints, but without the time it takes for oil paints to dry, but also allows you to do palette knife painting in the way that I did last year for some of the for one of the Christmas makes last November. So let's use a different color. This is Madder Lake Red. Now the color range for this collection is lovely, so you can buy them singularly, and there are some sets. I'll go through the sets in a minute. So I can now take my Madder root, mix it with the white medium, and it's really not going to change its color, particularly not when it's dried. And I now have a paste. So if I want to create texture, I can do that. Quite happily. And I can build my layers. So you can build what you want, but I've got a depth and a texture into there. Let's just go with one of the other colours. I'm going to pick one that won't matter if we're, so this is Indian yellow. So I'm going to pop that there, and then we'll try. Oh, she says, let me just take me off the screen a minute so that you can see what I'm doing. Let me just, let's move, there we are. So I've just popped a little bit of that paint onto here, and I've got some of my impasto medium. So let me just pop that onto there. And I think you can see that there really isn't much change in colour. So this, I'm thinking that you could maybe make some, if you're wanting to, you could make petals with this quite happily. I'm not going to make petals today. And then we have magenta. So we've got all of the primary colours as well as lots of complementary colours and tonal mixes. And I'll come back to that. So I know I've got a bit of the orange in there, but the Indian yellow in there. But if I scoop that all together and then just roll that on my palette knife. So, and I've now got a little petal. And that will keep its depth, will keep its dimension as I do that. And you can then build that through the whole of your pieces as you want to. And yes, like everything else, you can mix your own colours. There's no harm in doing that, to do that. There we are. So you could I could make myself a background with a sky and a horizon line, and then pop maybe some flowers using the sculpture painting techniques into the base of that, because it will give me texture into here. And if I want to add, I can then carve into this to make marks quite happily. They'll stay. You can build whatever you want as you want, and those will stay in that format. So a really useful medium. So that covers our mediums. So that can now go out of harm's way. So we have 40ml packs. We have individuals in 20ml packs, about 20 mils. There are 51 colours altogether, I believe. And because it's impossible to choose, because if you're like me, you have to have every one of them, Pentart have put some packs together. So there is a pack of 6 that has a white, yellow, permanent red, violet, phthalo blue, and a viridian. So a really nice dark green. So from this colour palette, you can mix pretty much every colour that you want, I think. You've got a yellow, you've got a green, you've got a blue. So you've got a good mix of colours there to start. So ideal starter palette, 6 times 20 mils in a set. Great for starting. If you think that that's really not going to be enough, and why would it be enough, then you might opt to buy the 12 piece set, which has a different range of colours, apart from the fact that the titanium white is repeated. So this has as I say, the only colour I think that is doubled up in here is the, there we are, is that white. Okay, because the yellow is lemon yellow, whereas this is yellow pale. Okay, we've got phthalo blue, which is a really dark blue, and we've got aquamarine and cerulean blue here. This one gives us our browns, in a burnt sienna and a raw umber. And also we've got a Mars black. So the only colour that doubles up across these is the white, and you'd likely to use lots of white. So even if you bought 2 sets, the only colour that you will double up with will be the white. And the white is, I think, one of the colours that you'll go through most as you make lots of different shades. And then, as I say, you can pick and mix the rest from the rest of the line that covers a huge range of different colours. So choose to your heart's content. Okay. Now, this is the line where I went, really, Pentat? You want me to explain these? Because we all know I'm not an oil painter. Anyway, I will do my best. And I have several things missing from this line. Okay, so the oil paints again come in I think 48 different colours. If that's not enough, I really don't know what is. And they've got the same colours, but they are all clearly labelled as oil paints. And here we've got our first open square. Let me just lift this up. Okay, so we have our first open square. So this is an opaque, transparent colour, even though it's an oil paint. The others in that set are all fully opaque. So we've got white, yellow, permanent red, a violet, transparent blue, and viridian. So beautiful, beautiful colours. The colour palette is just phenomenal, I have to say. And if that's not enough colours for you, then I'm going to suggest that the 12 one might be a good option. There we are. Good evening, Anya. Welcome, my darling. So this is the 12 option, and it's the same names of colours in the acrylic paint, but we've got some additions. So here we've got an fully opaque white, a fully opaque yellow and yellow ochre, a semi-opaque permanent deep yellow, vermilion red, and alizarin crimson. That's a mouthful. Vermilion is as a natural pigment is highly toxic. This is not toxic. It's a synthetic colour from that point of view, and it will have its pigment number, which is a universal classification. So PR4, which is universal across all of the pigment manufacturers. For that, and then we have 2 translucents, rose and ultramarine blue, and the rest are fully opaque. So we've got burnt sienna, raw umber, iron oxide black, and I'm so excited to use these. And I know I've just said I'm not an oil painter, because I'm not, but I've got other plans for them. More will be explained over the coming weeks. But these are so the problem with these for people is that they are oil paints. They will be touch dry in a few weeks. They will not be dry from top to bottom for about a year. So that in itself is maybe a headache. And they have an odour because they are an oil paint. So just be aware of that. Just put those out of the way. So in this range with the oil paints, there's linseed oil, which will help allow these to spread, and then there's a stand oil, which will provide a thick glaze over the top and make everything really quite glossy and shiny. Now you can mix these with the structure paste and the powders if you want some texture quite happily. There is also turpentine, a thinner, a brush cleaner in this range. So as those arrive, I will go through those with us doing them. But let me just grab an unprepped piece of resin. It's from a Stamperia mold, okay? because I'm not going to use these as paints because I don't oil paint. Because we know I don't oil paint. And this is plastic, so, and it's unprimed, which of course is not what we would do. And let me just find a cream crackered brush, because it's an oil paint, it will need a solvent cleaner. But if I pop this into here, oil and water do not mix, obviously. But you can see that I'm going to get beautiful coverage. And I can just leave that, quite happily leave that as it is, and wait several weeks for it to dry. It's not what I'm going to do. Or we can just wipe back. So I'm going to take the surface off. So I'm going to get a beautiful, show all of the texture in my mould, in my pieces. I've got a dry cloth here. It's going to leave it in the depths of my piece. Let me just try this with, say, the blue. So we're going to have some experimenting with using these to fill cracks, to antique and age and distress. And we're not always going to have to use horror of horrors. That will be brown. So that's that blue. Let's just pop that into there. Get it into all of the nooks and the crannies. So that is the ultramarine blue, which is a translucent colour, but it's beautiful. And I can see that on a watery based project, popping that into cracks will just look phenomenal. And then I can wipe off. So I can take it off the surface. I'll get most of it off the surface. But I can leave that in, and I've still got the hints of colours. But you can also put them on a piece, on a canvas, and paint with them. Oh, yeah, let's just mix some of that over into that brown. They'll mix together. So we've got a different colour. You don't really want it all on the surface because it's going to, it just will take forever to dry. As I say, it takes about 6 weeks to be touch dry, but then a year to be fully dry. So that now needs to go into a pot of white spirit. There is a turpentine cleaner that's designed to go with this collection. My advice would be, if you're investing in the oil paints, will be to invest in those products, in the correct products for your things. So we've got a big collection here of oil paints in lots of different colours. Some oils, the stand oil, I'm not really an expert at. I will do some more playing, but it's like thick honey. Yeah, it's really quite gloopy. You can see how gloopy, almost like honey. Oh. There we are. So that is yellow ochre. Let's see if I've got another brush that really won't matter too much if I cream cracker it even further. So I can mix these together. And it's just becoming more fluid, more mobile, more easy to move around, but definitely has a shiny glaze over the surface to it. Whereas the linseed oil is definitely one better picked up with, she said. Do you know, I had lots of pipettes on my desk. What have I done with my pipettes? I know I had lots of pipettes on my desk. There we are. I do have lots of pipettes on my desk. Is not one that I would want to pour, because it really is, you can see it's not holding its depth at all. And this will just allow me to spread this out, and a little will go. That was just what was left on my plate. So if you're wanting an undercoat with your painting, you can see how that linseed oil in there is just allowing that. You can see the difference in the depth and how it's allowing that colour just to spread over such a big area. So true artists will understand, I'm sure. But it's just allowing that to spread. So I've got an underglaze. And quite often when you're working with paints, you want an underlayer, and then you build your layers from there. So that is a brief introduction to the new Artemisia line of products. So we've got textures and base mediums that are all water-based. We have oil, we've got acrylic paints that are again water-based, so that any of those will mix with your water-based products. Your water-based textures and mediums can be used on the bottom layer of a canvas to add texture and dimension, but then have to be allowed to completely dry before using your oil paint. So there's a logic, as you'd anticipate, for the way this line has been put together. And it is a standalone line that has all the textures, all the mediums that you need to work professionally with these. But just because it has the title professional doesn't mean that's the only thing you can do with them. You will be able to use these in your more craft related products, and that is my plan for the next 2 or 3 weeks of lives. It will be doing my signature type of makes my way, but using these products instead. So that's that for tonight. I do hope that some of you will be able to join Teresa on Friday. Now, I think it's 5 o'clock UK time. And that and she's going to take you through step by step a painting, I think using the oil paints in particular, but building up her layers, the layers as she goes. She has had lots of oil painting lessons, so she knows, from that point of view, much more about how they work. So I can see that Rima Walsamore has asked a question, and that question is, how do the acrylic gessos compare to the primer by Pentart? And that's easy. The primer paste by Pentart is really thick. This has been designed to work on canvas boards, wood boards, or linen, and is definitely much thinner and goes over as a much smoother coat without needing any extra water added to it. And it's definitely not suitable for putting through a stencil in the same way as the primer paste will. Some of you will have seen me use the Pentart primer paste for creating a thick layer and then making a faux wood technique with that, because it holds that texture. You cannot do that with the new acrylic gessos. They are very much thinner, more fluid, designed to give a completely flat, even surface on which you then build your painting from. So, has anyone else got any questions that they want to ask me? If I don't know the answer, then I will find out before next week for you. I'll just give you a few minutes to think about that. And I hope that you can then... Absolutely, Helen. No. I mean, you could, the heavy body gels will work, the structure paste will work, the modelling paste in the collection will work, but the primer paste in this collection, the acrylic gesso, is very much not a primer, not suitable for using through a stencil. It does not have enough body to do that. So if anyone else has any more questions, then I'm going to say that good night for tonight. Please stay safe, be kind to each other, look after yourselves, and I will see you next, I think it's Tuesday. But I will see you either Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. I will have a discussion with Sylvia about the date, and watch out for my socials, and that will let you know what I'm up to. So good night, ladies. Please take care, and I will see you online soon. Bye.